everyone, welcome to Friday's Live. I am delighted to be with you today on the best day of the week. It is Friday and it is the final Friday in November. So we've got a feast of new records for you to enjoy. So do let me know where you are tuning in from. I'm coming today from North London, where it is very windy. It's been very cold. It's starting to feel very, very wintry. So do let us know where you're joining in from. We have got Daisy in the comments today. And yeah, as I was saying, we have a packed session for you. So we've got our new records of the week. They are from Herefordshire and they are from Kent this week, as well as our newspapers, of course. And we've got a 93-year-old family history mystery to take a look at as well, which is very exciting. And let's just see who we've got joining us. We've got Victoria. Hello, Victoria, who is joining us from a very cold Suffolk. It's very, very cold today, really feeling that winter chill. We've got Andrea from a chilly Stoke and Trent. We've got Shirley over on YouTube. Sunny but chilly South Cambridgeshire. Send some of that sun our way for the weekend, please, Shirley. We've got Anya. Luna, the cat, and I are under a blanket in Fife. That sounds like a great idea for this weather. We've got Karen and Heather, Andrew and Jeff from a balmy Devon. Kidding. I think we've got a common theme today. It is a cold one, but let's warm ourselves with some family history talk and records. Who else we've got? We've got Valerie, Robert from a bright and cold Dorset. Okay, so oh yes, I will just say our question of the week, which we will come back to later. It is: have you inherited any family history documents or ephemera? If so, how have they helped you with your family history research? Apologies, the question of the week is a bit of a wordy one today, but Daisy will kindly post it for me. It is, have you inherited any family documents or ephemera? And if so, how have they helped you with your family history research? Okay. Without any further ado, let us dive into our new records of the week. And it's a good week. It's always a good week, but this week we are on burials. And we've got brand new Herefordshire records joining us this week. And they are joining the National Burial Index for England and Wales, as well as two brand new Kent burial sets. So there's one from Medway and one from Bromley. It's a funeral director's records that we've got for the Bromley set. It's a really, really fascinating collection, as well as three brand new newspapers. So we've got some more joiners. We've got Jenny, we've got Gina, and Daisy's kindly posted the link to this week's new records. And Victoria got a question about Black Friday offers. We have 25% off, I believe. If Daisy, if you could possibly share the link to our to the offers, that would be great. And we've got Ellen joining. Perfect. Okay, now let's dive into these Herefordshire records. Now we have let me gather my thoughts. We have, yes, 122,691 new Herefordshire records, and they have joined the National Burial Index for England and Wales. So just as a reminder, the National Burial Index project was started all the way back in 1994, and it was first published in 2001 with 5.4 million records. So it is compiled by the Family History Federation, and the collection now numbers over 17 million burials in all. So really impressive. And as for our new records of the week, they cover the county of Herefordshire, spanning the years 1539 to 1840, and they cover over 200 Church of England parishes. So here are some historical views of Herefordshire, and you know that when I do our records, I do like to dive into our newspaper collection as well, just to find some historic images of the locations that we're talking about. So on the left-hand side there, you can see quite a curious image. It shows a tumulus, so a mound, a historic mound, being opened in the parish of St Wonards. That was in the 1850s. And on the right-hand side, you can see a woodcut. Now, this was featured in the Illustrated London News in the 20th century, but it's actually originally from 1676, and it shows the process of cider making. Herefordshire is famous for its cider and for being the home of Bulmer's cider. So with that Bulmer's theme in mind, I had a look for if I could find any Bulmers in our Herefordshire records. So one thing to say, these records are index only, but they contain a large amount of information. So we've got the record there for Edward Bulmer at the top, and he died at the age of 63 and was buried on the 30th of December 1825. So we get the date of burial. So we can also see his denomination, which was Anglican, and under the description field you can see the name of the church where his burial service was performed. So that is St Bartholomew's, and he was buried in Holmer in 1825. And below that, we've got the record set for Anne Baskerville, which is a wonderful name. And Anne passed away at the young age of 35 in St Wonards. I had to look up how to pronounce this place. It looks like it should be St Wionards or something like that, but it's Wonards, I believe. The church at St Wonards is appropriately named St Wonard, and apparently he was a local Celtic saint. And that tumulus we saw in that previous image, that was said to be his burial place. And when it was actually opened up in 1855, they found two burials dating from the Bronze Age. So not quite St Wonards. And it's actually, you can find that tumulus in the churchyard of St Wonards too. And I've now said St Wonards too many times and it's making no sense to me. So we've got Roz joining us from a sunny Massachusetts, and Daphne has woken up late from a nap. I hope you had a lovely nap, Daphne. It's certainly one of those afternoons where you just want to hunker down. And Anya's got a brick wall. We've got a big brick wall in Herefordshire. And yeah, I'm with you on that, Anya. I have oh gosh, I think she must be my 4 times great grandmother, and the Trail Girls Cold in Herefordshire, where she was born. But these records might be of some help. All right, so we're now into Kent, and we have 2 sets of Kent burials actually this week, and the first ones are from the Medway area, and there are 14,506 new records, and they are not available elsewhere. So these are quite modern ones actually. They're from 1981 to 2020, and they fit into 2 different sets. So we've got burial registers for Chatham, Gillingham, Rochester, and Strood, and they're index only, but again, there's a lot of information in these indexes. You've got the date of death and burial, and also the place of death, so the address, and that is a really useful detail there. But the bulk of this record set, these new records, actually come from the registers of the Medway Crematorium in Chatham. So there's about 10,000 records that come from the Medway Crematorium. So they're over 10,000, and again, these are very detailed indexes. And you can see the record here for Minnie Barwell. And I pulled out Minnie Barwell's record here because she was 108 years old when she died. And we can see the date of her cremation. It was the 11th of February, 1982. In the notes field, you can see the date of her death. So that was the 2nd of February, 1982. We learned that she lived in the Herne Bay area under the residence field. And it's also possible to learn with these crematorium records what happened with the ashes, so whether they were picked up from the crematorium or whether they were scattered there. So yeah, quite an unusual set. And I was quite keen to find out a little bit more about Minnie Barwell. And her amazing achievement of living to the age of 108. So you'll excuse the side quest here, but you know I love a rabbit hole. So I felt sure that her story would have appeared in our newspapers, given that achievement of living to 108. And I was right. So her name actually appeared in the national press in 1980 on the 31st of January in the Daily Mirror. So the 31st of January is actually Minnie's birthday. And the article reads, "Congrats, raising a toast for the 106th birthday of Mrs. Minnie Barwell of Radley, Queens Road, Whitstable, Kent." And I actually found this picture of Minnie too, which was great. This was on the occasion of her 104th birthday. You can just see that card with 104, and I wonder if they had that specially made. And she was featured in her local paper, the Whitstable Times and the Herne Bay Herald. And she is described as Whitstable's oldest resident, and she just looks so happy. She's got such a smile on her face. Otherwise, I found a really brief mention of her in the Bromley and West Kent Mercury all the way back in 1938, where she was fined for not having a dog license. So I think we went on to dog licenses last week, I think, when we were with Liam. One of his favourites, that's the Irish dog registers. And Minnie appears in the 1939 register, and she's in Rochester in Kent. So we know it's her. She has the birthday of the 31st of January, 1874. So that Daily Mirror piece appeared on the 31st of January 1980, marking her 104th birthday. So she would have been 65 in 1939, and she is described as undertaking unpaid domestic duties. She's living with her daughter Elsie, who is a shop assistant, and there's a tiny little annotation there that she worked at Boots. So a nice household name there back from 1939. So I was firmly down the rabbit hole with our Minnie, intent on discovering more about her. And I found her in the 1921 census. She was at that same address in Rochester, living with her daughter again, who was then 17. Minnie is 47 in 1921. There's no sign of the husband here. And she has a really interesting job, actually. She is a machinist for Short Brothers Aircraft. So I thought this was quite interesting, really, quite at the early days of aviation. So Short Brothers Aircraft, or Shorts as they were known, were founded in 1908 and were actually the first company in the world to make production aeroplanes. So following the First World War, the company expanded, and this expansion was actually in Rochester, so where Minnie was living. So that's where Minnie went to work. Going back in time, Minnie was married in 1896, and that's her marriage entry there from our collection of Kent marriages and banns. So her maiden name was Smithison, and she married William Barwell. And William Barwell had an interesting occupation of his own, and I had to get a second pair of eyes on this to sort of, were my eyes deceiving me? Because I've not seen this before. He was actually a beehive maker. So yeah, a really interesting occupation there. As for Minnie, she was a Kent native. She was born in Strood to John and Mary Smithison. So a little snapshot there of Minnie's rather long life. Now, our final new record set of the week has to be one of my favourites. I don't have favourites, but it's very interesting looking into this one. So these records are from the funeral account books of H.G. Dunn and Sons, and they were funeral directors in Bromley in Kent. So there are nearly 1,500 of these records, and they're nice and early too. So they're pre-census, so they're from 1803 to 1841. And I got distracted again looking into the history of H.G. Dunn and Sons. Now, this company actually started out a while ago as a draper's in 1710 before moving into the furniture and the funeral directing fields. Interesting diversification there. Now, you'll find them mentioned in our newspapers, and I've just pulled out a few of the adverts there for funeral directors in Bromley or funeral furnishers. And they had this beautiful shop actually in Bromley in the Market Square. There's a picture of that there, which was sadly destroyed by fire in the Second World War during a bombing raid. The business kept on, and it mainly focused on furniture rather than funeral directing. So you'll find plenty of mentions of H.D. Dunn and Sons in our glossy magazines for the furniture. But back to the funeral account books. Now, there are over 1,500 of these. And they contain the record of those who had passed away for whom H.D. Dunn and Sons has acted as funeral directors. And you'll also get the name of the account holder. So sometimes that will be the name of the person who's died, or sometimes it will be the name of the person who's paying for the funeral costs. So these records do actually come with images, and they link back to an index, which was actually created from the funeral account books by the North West Kent Family History Society. So here's an example, and this is the record for Lydia Lote, who was buried in 1820. So the notes section here is really useful in the transcript, and if you click through, you can have a look at what those notes say in the actual image. So we see that Mrs. Lydia Lote died on the 26th of January, 1820, at the age of just 29. It's really sad. We learn that she was the wife of Daniel Lote and also the daughter of Robert Russell of Sanderstead, Surrey. So it's likely that our Lydia wasn't a Kent native. We also see that she was buried at Horton Kirby, which is a little way away from Bromley. So that again is an interesting detail here. So there's really a lot to glean from these funeral records. And these records from Dunn's really sit in well with our other Kent records. So Lydia was buried at Horton Kirby, although the funeral books were compiled in Bromley. We also have that burial register entry from Horton Kirby for Lydia Lote. Interestingly, her abode is given as Southborough, which is near Bromley, and her age is actually given as 39 and not 29, as it says in those funeral account books. So there is something to dig into there. And I found this lovely view of the churchyard and a yew tree there from Horton Kirby, where I assume Lydia was buried. And that's from the Illustrated London News in 1876, from a lovely section entitled Views of Kent. And while I was looking through the burial register, I was just browsing through, trying to find Lydia's entry. I came across this entry, which I just had to include here at the bottom, just really, struck me. There is no name registered with this burial record, and it actually got me wondering, like, how many records are there out there where there's just no name recorded? We mentioned brick walls today. Could it be that one of our ancestors was buried with no name? It's quite a distressing, sobering thought, that one. And the entry here, it reads, for a stranger, name unknown, who died suddenly at Horton Kirby. And there's even more information here that the vicar's put down. It describes how a coroner's verdict decided that the stranger had died by the visitation of God. And I had just gone to assume that this stranger was a man, but actually there's no gender given, and the age is noted as appeared 30 years. And Andrew's saying there's plenty of those at his local cemetery, which is just, I think, is so sad, and just quite moving. Anya's giving some love for the yew tree sketch. I found that very evocative, and especially going along with this story of this stranger who passed away in Horton Kirby. So that's it for our new records of the week, and on to newspapers. So we have a trio of new newspapers for you this week, and we've actually updated a dozen of our existing titles as well. So we've added the Newtown Abbey Times and East Antrim Times, which covers the Newtown Abbey area in the north of Belfast. So that's actually the sister paper of last week's title, which was the new title, which was the Carrick Times and East Antrim Times. Speaking of sister papers, we actually have 2 new Berkshire newspapers for you this week, which are sister papers. So that's the Ascot Times and the Crowthorne Times. They are in turn sister papers to some of the other papers that we have in our collection. So that's the Reading Evening Post, the Bracknell Times, and the Wokingham Times. Now, in terms of our updated titles, there's some updates to more of our Northern Irish titles. We've got more pages added to the Edinburgh Evening News, and we've also popped into Somerset to update some of our Somerset titles. And just a little teaser for next week, we've got a big Scottish title joining us, so look out for that one. Right, that's it for all of our new titles of the week. And we're on to our question of the week, which is, have you inherited any family documents or ephemera? And if so, how have they helped you with your family history research? So like ephemera, we're talking adverts, calendars, guest lists, posters, tickets, all that, when you have a memory box and you put certain things in, like when I go traveling, I like to put, like a bus ticket in, or like a map of where I've been. And you do wonder what will happen to that. And I like to think it would be passed down, or my mum has a wonderful scrapbook of when she traveled through Europe in the 1950s. So it was very sort of soon after the Second World War, and it's just such a wonderful document. So I'll just come out of this for a second, and I can see some answers coming through. So we'll start with Andrew here. So the oldest document we have is Gran's birth certificate. When we found it, she insisted it was wrong because she'd knocked 2 years off, even after we used it to get her pension backdated. Oh, that is so funny. I can imagine. I can imagine that your Gran being quite a character. We've got Pickles. Has lost the sound. Daisy, do we have sound? Can people hear me? And let's just have a look. Yeah, thank you. Pickles, try refreshing. That always works. Let's have a look. Karen, her dad has a Samaritan's handbook that he found in a box under the stairs. Inside the front cover was written the name of my dad's auntie's husband and the date in the early 1920s of when it was presented to him on the day that he joined. I guess it would have been. I love that because that gives a sense of what your dad's auntie would husband, what he was involved with. Gives sort of that colour and that kind of texture to their lives. Good. We've got David. Cousin has a family Bible that simply lists the name and birth dates of grandfather and his 9 siblings. However, several have the incorrect year. How common would that be? Oh, that is an interesting one, because you would think that would be a source of truth. Maybe that would be the baptism year, perhaps, that could be slightly out, but wonderful to have that document, and so special when there are so many siblings. I was doing a family tree the other day that had 15 children, just incredible. And Gordon, now this is an interesting one. Not for my family, but my niece obtained all the early records of her house. We gave it to the local history society, and it filled in some of the history of the local lord's estate before it was sold off piecemeal. And that's so interesting, yes, as well, because the documents relating to your house and house history, that's another aspect. And I love diving into, houses. I do think that houses have personalities somehow, and having those records is a good way of unlocking that the house's personalities. And Pickles is back with us. That's good, amazing. And I don't want to pronounce your name wrong, Angel. I will learn how to pronounce your name. Welcome. She has her dad's last report at his school in Ireland in the 1930s, and also reference from his temporary job as a GPO messenger boy in Dublin in 1935. Oh, that's amazing, and being able to get those descriptions are just an incredible privilege to be able to read those words from the past. So I'm just browsing through. Catching up here. And it's got Stephen over on YouTube. I was allowed to photo a letter in the Heritage Centre at Newcastle, Scotland, that contained a family name. And when I got home, it was about one branch of the family that emigrated from Scotland. Oh, that's amazing! And I love going to a record office and just browsing through, and then to find that connection later is really, really special. Gordon as a family Bible, where I found I had an older sister who had died virtually straight after she was born. My parents never spoke of her at all. Oh gosh, how moving. Oh, that is a really, really moving discovery. These family Bibles, wow, such discoveries. And Karen has one too, a Brown family Bible. She doesn't think she would have got very far without the clues in the Bible, and lots of lovely middle names. And it is those middle names that are those differentials. They can be so useful in tracking down ancestors. I'm going to look in this now next section. One of our characters in that story has quite an unusual middle name too, so that does make things a little bit easier for research. And Shirley over on YouTube has a postcard sent by my grandfather when he was in India with a photo of him on the front, and that is very special. My mum has lots and lots of letters between her family when her uncle was out in Hong Kong. No photographs, so that's always a special one. I think I've scrolled up too far now, so I'm going to scroll back down again. We have Ingrid, who inherited a suitcase full of photos, letters, documents from my father's parents' side of the family. That was over 3 years ago. I'm still working to identify all the people in the photos. Several of the ones I've identified have been educated guesses. The letters have been great for getting to know more about the people. Well, exactly. And I'm working with my mum to go through all of the photos that we have for her to put names on the back, because there are people that I just don't recognise. And even I'm one of 4 siblings, and looking at the baby photos, we're all kind of indistinguishable. So it is useful just to put on the back that that's so-and-so and that's so-and-so. So future generations know exactly who they're looking at. And Victoria, my grandmother gave me some books that my granddad has been awarded at a school prize giving. Great to be able to find out about what school he went to, as he died when my mum was little. I was also given his autograph book, which I'm working through, as it is full of names of other distant relations. Great to see their handwriting, and some have even drawn and painted in it. The autograph book. This is something that we just, we don't have nowadays. I think my mum has one too. They're so special. You sort of think it's, for celebrities, but it's not. It's an opportunity for people to get names, of the close ones, as Victoria said, friends, family. So a really interesting one there. And we have Angela again, cousin I recently discovered, who now lives in the north, as the family Bible for the Cashmore family. His female line, Woodhull, married to the Cashmore line, who were prominent gun makers in the Midlands and bell ringers. The Bible dates back to the 1700s. I must say, I am very jealous of all these wonderful family Bibles. My family don't have anything like that, but what I do have is scraps and scraps of paper where my mum took notes from her granny on her side of the family and the family tree on that side. And doing my research, it's been really, really useful, because some of the things were just so spot on. So I feel like my great granny had such a memory to, all these marriages and cousins, of keeping track of her family. So that's been so useful. And Daphne, I enjoyed it when Jen did a live unboxing of family docs and stuff. Yes, we should do that again. We need to find another box of family documents. um, Great. So this really leads us very nicely on to the next section. And this is 93-year-old family history mystery. Catchy. So this story features my side of the family that I was talking about, the great granny who had compiled all that information about her family, and they are the Small family. I have spoken about the Small family on Friday's Live before, but they're always good for a story, as I think my great granny was. So we'll go with it. And it relates to this advert that you can see here. And let me just tell you what got me to this point. Let's do some background first before we dive in properly. So I was preparing a presentation about newspapers, and I like to use examples from my family tree. And one of the tips that I was outlining as I was preparing this presentation is that when you're searching for somebody in the newspapers, it's always good to keep your search parameters fairly broad. So broad in terms of geography, and even with in terms of the date range. So I had done this with my ancestor, my 4 times great grandfather, Abraham Small, and he died in 1850. Now, I had previously looked for him in newspapers, for mention of him in newspapers beyond the 1850 point, but staying in the 1800s. And I found mention of him, for example, in 1866. So that was 16 years after he had passed away. Now, that was in relation to his job as a land surveyor, and it was talking about a map that he had made. Now, one thing I had not done. I had not looked for mention of Abraham Small in the 20th century, and I ruled that out as a possibility. That why would Abraham Small, a man who had died in 1850, why would he be mentioned in the 20th century? So let me tell you, I was very surprised when I changed my filters. I found a mention of Abraham Small, and it would be my Abraham Small, in the newspapers from 1930. So 80 years after he had died. So for me, that was a complete reminder to keep those search parameters as broad as possible. That someone like Abraham, who might seem fairly inconsequential to history, and it is my mantra that nobody is inconsequential to history. He's not a famous somebody. He's not, doesn't have a Wikipedia page or anything. That someone like that could be mentioned 80 years after their death. So here's the entry, which appeared on Boxing Day, 1930. So we're approaching 93 years ago, and it appeared in the personal section on the front page of the Dover Express. And it reads, relative sort of Abraham Small, Stephen Callahan, Elizabeth Ralph, née Small, all resident in Dover in 1850. Mr. H. Ed Small, 8 Market Street, Dover. So there were 3 people mentioned here initially, and these 3 people are all relatives of mine, and as is Mr. H. Z. Small. So what was going on here? Why did H. Z. Small want to trace the relatives of these people? So this is my 93-year-old family history mystery. And see some more answers coming into the question of the week. With Pickles, had the job of clearing my mum's house last year. She passed away last Christmas, so I'm sorry, Pickles. Pickles was delighted to find a whole box of letters which she and Dad had written to each other during their 1940s courtship. I haven't managed to read them all yet, but they are full of terms of endearment like my angel, etc. And I'm tearing up, Pickles. That's so lovely. Oh gosh, yes. How special. Enjoy going through the rest of those. And David over on YouTube, I have a cassette recording of my grandmother, who was born in 1893. She is conversing with her brother born in 1891. Voices from the past. Exactly. That's really, talk about bringing the past to life. And Mike, On a similar vein of media, I have been given some old footage of the Leicester pageant 1932, which featured my grandfather, whom I've never met, who was Lord Mayor at the time. Oh, that's amazing to see that in video. That is a really special something to have. Okay, now on with this advert. So we'll dig into this a little bit more. So we have Abraham Small, my four times great grandfather. Now he lived from 1794 through to 1850. And then we have Stephen Callahan. He's not a direct ancestor of mine. He's the brother of my three times great grandmother, Anne Callahan, who married Abraham's son, Alfred Small. So Stephen was born in 1830. And finally, there's Elizabeth Ralph. Now, she was born Elizabeth Small in 1816. She was the daughter of Abraham Small, and she died in 1881. And then there's the matter of this H.Z. Small. And we were talking about unusual middle names earlier. So this must be Henry Zephaniah Small. It's lovely to have that said. It does help you narrow down things a little. And Henry Zephaniah Small, who was known as Zeph, and I know that he was known as Zeph from my great-great-grandmother's notes. He was the grandson of Abraham Small and the brother of my great-great-grandfather, Alfred Small. Okay. So there's a little pedigree view there of how these families fits together, and a note on trees and profile changes. We have been upgrading our profiles at the moment, and we did temporarily remove the kinship calculator, but I'm really happy to say that it is now back with us. So that is accessible in the profiles. If you go into profile view, and it's just below the profile header, it says view relations, and you can go back onto the wonderful kinship calculator, which is one of my favorite tools. So just a shout out to our product team and Adrian for bringing that back for us. And so yes, we can see the breakdown here on the pedigree view. So we've got the Small side and then the Callahan side. And from what I know of this family, they were fairly close-knit, and I get that impression from those detailed notes that my great-grandmother left behind. She knew so much about everyone. I get that sense that they were a close family. So it makes me wonder why Henry Zephaniah Zeph was looking for these relatives. Why was he looking for more relatives of Abraham, Stephen, and Elizabeth? So I feel like we need to dig into their stories a little bit more to understand the intent behind this particular advertisement. So let's go back to 1841. So that's 9 years before that 1850 time period is mentioned in the advert. So Abraham Small is a land surveyor. He lives in Buckland, just outside of Dover, with his family. So he is living with his wife Ellen and children Elizabeth. That's of course the Elizabeth that was mentioned in the advert, Esther, Henry, and Alfred. And as for Stephen Callahan, in 1841, he's 11, and his family have hit hard times. So his father passed away, and him and his sister Mary are at a Dover workhouse with their mother Rosina. So at least in 1841, the Smalls and the Callahans appear to be worlds away. So the Smalls are doing well. Abraham was a land surveyor. A few years before, he had applied on the basis of property ownership to become an elector. And so that was before suffrage was universal. But the Callahans, they're suffering. The prosperity of the Smalls had actually fueled an interesting family rumour. So on these family documents that my mum created with my great granny, the Small family tree is sort of really roughly sketched out, but the paper is very prominently headed with Abraham Small's name and the annotation Freeman of Dover. Now, I don't know how this rumour came down the generations, but was Zeph searching for relatives of Abraham so that he could claim this wealth that they might have assumed to have come with this position of Freeman of Dover? I'm not sure, but whatever happened, there was no real wealth that Abraham left behind, and we'll see what happened to his family, and no evidence. We have the newspapers that as a resource to check that he was ever made a free man of Dover. So Abraham Small, he passed away in March 1850, and you can see that really sort of short, sharp notice of his death that was published in the South Eastern Gazette there. What happened to his daughter Elizabeth? Now, she was unmarried at the time of Abraham's death, and we know that life was hard for unmarried women at this time. Especially if they had no means of their own. So Elizabeth went on to marry widower Daniel Ralph in 1859, and now he was 16 years her senior. So I always get the impression that it was perhaps a pragmatic match. Elizabeth was 42, and it's kind of interesting here to note the change in station. So her father Abraham was a land surveyor. I get the impression he was kind of upwardly mobile. I think he was hoping to sort of join the ranks of the middle classes. Her new husband Daniel was a labourer, the son of a milkman, so slightly more humble. And their marriage entry can be found in our Kent marriages and burials set. I realise we've had quite a Kent theme today with our Kent burials as well. And what is also interesting to note here is how, while Elizabeth signs her name, Daniel leaves his mark. Of course, this was not unusual at the time. This was before compulsory education, but Elizabeth is the literate one, while Daniel is not. And it's also very interesting to note the name of one of the witnesses here, and it is Anne Callahan. There's that Callahan name. Anne Callahan would go on to marry Elizabeth's brother, Alfred Small, which suggests by 1859 that the families, they were already close, and Anne Callahan would go on to marry Alfred Small a year later in 1860. But back to Elizabeth, who by now was Elizabeth Ralph, and we find her and her husband Daniel in the 1861 census in Charlton, Dover. Elizabeth has taken up the profession of a dressmaker. Note again this change in status. The previous census is 1851, 1841. She has not had an occupation. They are still in Charlton in the 1871 census. At the age of 71, Daniel Ralph is still working. It's remarkable how hard our ancestors worked into older age, and he's working as a labourer for the local board. Now, Elizabeth, who is 54, she doesn't appear to have a profession in 1871, and her story ends 10 years later, in 1881, at the age of 62, we find her in our Kent burials. She passed away as the new year of 1881 rolled around. And her residence is actually noted as Union Dover, which I suspect may be the workhouse. So again, if Zeph was after riches, they're not here with Elizabeth. And it doesn't appear that Elizabeth, with her late marriage, had any children. So there would be no relatives, direct ancestors of Elizabeth for Zeph to contact. And now that leaves Stephen, the final player in our trio. Now, Stephen Henry Callahan was the younger brother of Anne Callahan, so that makes him Zeph's uncle. And I'm not afraid to mention that he is a brick wall for me. And, that's not helped by some of the documentation around Stephen. So we find Stephen Henry Callahan in our Kent baptisms. He was baptised on the 10th of December, 1836, the son of Henry and Rosina Callahan. So Henry O'Callahan, he was an Irish mariner. And this baptism, because it's in 1836, there's an annotation below which reads August the 24th, and it looks like it says 1836. And because the baptism was in 1836, it's kind of fair to make that assumption that Stephen's birth was in 1836. No. If you look closely, I swear I've circled that 6 in the 1836. That's pretty shaky. It's a 0. it should be 1830, and that is confirmed by other documents. So he's 11, as we remember, in the 1841 census. And then there are these wonderful letters authored by his mother Rosina in 1840 and 1842. I did a live on these about a year ago, I think. And these letters were penned by her after she had fallen on hard times after the death of her husband. And she was begging for her 10-year-old son in 1840 to be admitted to the Royal Hospital School in Greenwich. So that confirms Stephen's name. So, at one point I had two Stephens on that family tree, in 1831 and an 1836 one, but no, that is his birth year, 1830. So beyond that, I know very little of Stephen, whether or not he was admitted to the school. His mother says that she wants him to be a sailor like his father. Whether that happened, I don't know. I don't know that. So he is a brick wall. So I'm wondering whether Zeph didn't know what happened to him either. That's a possibility. Perhaps his advert was an attempt to break down that brick wall and actually find out what had happened to his uncle. And is there anything that we can learn about Zeph then to help us with this mystery and his motives? So he was born in 1867 to Alfred John Small and Anne Callahan in Canterbury. Alfred was a carpenter, and he later moved his family to West London, and we find the family here in the 1881 census in Isleworth. So Zeph and his brother Alfred would both become engine drivers for the Great Western Railway. That job would take Zeph to Wales, and we find him in Canton in Cardiff, married to Catherine Isabel Williams in the 1901 census. The couple would have two children, Gwendolyn and John. And according to the family documents, Zeph would later travel to India for work. So I couldn't find him in 1911 and 1921, so I'm assuming he was in India at that time. So there's no sort of apparent reason for this motivation for placing an advert. There was one more clue. There was that address mentioned in the ad, and that was and the address of 8 Market Street, Dover. And I was pretty sure that Zeph didn't live there. I think he became London-based after being in India. In the 1921 census, 8 Market Street, it's a residential property. It's occupied by the Bowles family. And looking through newspapers at that time frame that Zeph actually placed the advert, we find an advertisement in the Dover Express from 1926 for a banking service that was actually based at 8 Market Street, the wonderfully named Messrs. Flashman and Co. So I think that Zeph was most likely using 8 Market Street as an office, as an address to sort of direct that post onto, because he himself did not live in Dover at that time. I'll see Linda's on her way. Have a good evening and weekend, Linda, too. And again, the 1939 register shows that 8 Market Street, Dover is split into 2 and is home to the Stephens family and the Abbott family. So not that office address. So yeah, there was a bit of a dead end for me looking into this address at the night ago. I love looking at, again, house history is always so compelling, and we could trace the families through both the 1939 register and in the newspapers there, their fate. So yeah, that was a bit of a dead end, and it was proved then by the electoral register for 1929 that Zeph was indeed in London. He's in Hammersmith, and that's where it became a bit more tricky for me to track down Zeph, because he's not listed with that very distinctive middle name. It's just Henry Small, but he is in a household with Catherine, the name of his wife. So I think that is the right Henry Small there in 1929. Anyway, Zeph's location shocked me in 1939. He changed profession. So he'd gone from engine driver to become a newsagent and tobacconist, and he was living with his wife, Catherine. in Tottenham, which is where I live now. And you get those tingles. That's family history tingles. That's when I got. Yeah, this is definitely one of them. I had no idea. And looking then at his record in the England and Wales Government Probate Death Index, Seth actually stayed. He lived out the rest of his life in Tottenham, and he died on the 31st of March, 1949, at Philip Lane. And I was like, Philip Lane. That seems really familiar to me. And Philip Lane is actually where the church is that I'm getting married at next year. So yeah, we had no idea until I did this piece of research. So yeah, that's going to be a little bit of something extra special for me. So that's a lovely small coincidence. So that was, I didn't really solve that mystery, I don't think. But what I think is that Zeph's motives, I'm not sure they were mercenary. Just judging, he seems to be in a comfortable position in life with enough to get by. So I'd like to imagine it was more of a just reaching out to find the rest of his family. I'm wondering whether his mother, Anne, didn't know what happened to her brother Stephen. I think that could be possible, that it was just more of a sort of altruistic thing. I'm hoping. I'm seeing this through rose-tinted glasses. But yes. So anyway, we've got 10 minutes. I'm going to do something a little bit different. Looking at some really, really old records now. And this is a call from Karen. She got married in the church that 5 times great-grandparents married in, some 250 years before, no prior connection. It is so weird, that circular nature of family history, that you could be walking these streets or going into a church that your ancestors did. It is that is wonderful. And yeah, Rose's rose-tinted glasses. Yeah, I'll patent that. Thank you. So now I'm just going to do a quick overview of some of the oldest records that we actually have on. Oh, no, before I do that. Oh, no, I was getting ahead of myself. Right. So in the face of such family history mysteries and conundrums that can be posed by our newspapers, such as this article, and we have launched a brand new feature, social sharing of our newspaper clippings. And this was something that Chris and Martin previewed a few weeks ago with Ellie. And I'm really happy to say that this facility is now live. So you can now share your newspaper clippings to your social media, Facebook or X, as it's known as nowadays, or copy the link elsewhere. So simply clip your article and share the link to your social media feed, and your friends and families will be able to click through on a link to see the image of the article that you have clipped. So it's a good way for sort of solving problems and getting the hive mind together, and a great way also to showcase those wonderful newspaper finds with your family and your friends. And yeah, talking of ancient lineages here with Andrew, going back to the same parish in 1678. That is quite an achievement. We have some quite old records on Findmypast, actually, and some of our oldest records date from the medieval period, and we actually have 2 record sets that have medieval in their titles, and these intrigued me. And as you can see, I got a bit carried away by adding pictures of medieval art. I love a bit of medieval art, what can I say? I will not get distracted by the art, but these 2 sets in particular are the York Medieval Probate Index and the Somerset Medieval Will Abstracts. And Gordon's gone to Philip Lane 191, 2-story terrace house, shop on the ground floor, called Future Cut, thanks to Google Maps. Where would we be without Google Maps? And Daisy has very kindly shared the links there to the York Medieval Probate Index. So this features over 10,000 records from 1267 through to 1500, and it is an index-only collection. although source copies can be ordered online. So you can see that link there on the transcripts. So these records mainly cover Yorkshire, but actually 12.5% of the collection, I love that statistic, cover the rest of England. So apparently every county in England is mentioned, as well as Ireland, there's Scottish records, Wales, and further afield in Poland and France. So the transcripts there, they look a little like this. So I'll search for the name Staveley. That's a Yorkshire name. Mine's a Cumbrian. I'm a Cumbrian Staveley. But anyway, and I found Thomas Staveley's record when I searched these ancient records here. And what I really like about this set is there's some really interesting details in the transcript. For example, that alternative spelling of the last name, Staveley, is Stavler. And I hadn't really ever thought about that being a possibility before. So, Stavler. And Thomas Staveley is a gentleman. How wonderful! I don't think I have many gentlemen in my family tree. And this dates all the way back from 1445. And you'll find more details about the type of document that it is referencing under the section document. So it's about a will, and it was written in Latin. It had the date of 13th of December 1445, and probate on the 26th of January 1446. So just love the antiquity here, and 1446 being the date that this Thomas Staveley most likely passed away. And there's just included this one here, Robert Staveley there, who died in Sesse in 1458. So my father is a Robert too, so it was interesting to see his name here with the status occupation of rector, because that's what my dad was too. Oh yes, Anya, liking my illustrations. Thank you. I'll always make sure that we have lovely illustrations alongside our records. Oh gosh, some great finds going. Anne recently found a newspaper cutting, 1861, with my 2 times great grandfather. Gosh, I had a fit and fell into the dock at Birkenhead, taking his son with him. Glad to say he was saved. Oh, thank goodness for that. And our other ancient record set is the Somerset medieval wills collection. So these were, let's find my notes for where they come from. They hail from 1383 to 1558, and there are nearly 1,500 of these records, which have been compiled by records made by the Diocese of Bath and Wells. And the originals of these were actually stored in Exeter, but they were sadly destroyed by fire during the Second World War. So these records were brought together from different printed books, and you can actually see the original images of these books, which are definitely worth a look. And I've actually pulled out the earliest record from this collection here, which is 1383. So for context, 1383, we've got Richard II on the throne. Beyond British shores, Bastille had just been completed in Paris, and Löwenbräu beer was first brewed in Munich. And 1383 is also the year that the gentleman here, Maurice Wythe's will was proved. The transcript is admittedly a little bit sparse, but click through to the image and you will be amazed by this detail that comes from 1383. Just look, so we actually have the words of Maurice Wythe, and he was a knight, so he's got that high status. And this was from the 11th of July, 1383, and he wished to be buried at St Botolph without Aldersgate in London. And there is still a church there. It was rebuilt on the original medieval site in the 1780s. And Maurice, he makes all sorts of bequests, including to his wife Elizabeth, to whom he gives all my husbandry from the present date until the feast of St. Michael to come, now growing in Portbury and Portchester, with all the necessaries pertaining to my chamber, wardrobe, hall, and also to the buttery and kitchen. To my said wife, all my silver vessels of the better sort. So there's just this sort of wonderful domestic detail that we have here, with Maurice giving away various other cups to friends and family. And he also thinks about his poor tenants as well, his poor tenants of Porterbury and Coverley, with bequests for them. And he also bequests money for the celebration of his soul. His final line, I feel like it could be interpreted in different ways, is, it is my last wish that my said wife, hold herself contented with all I bequeathed to her. I think, yeah, I don't know whether that's a bit shady or not. Um, and Karen, well, to A1303, she's been to St Botolph's. Oh, amazing. And Gordon's been to Thirsk Archive, has some really old records there too. I just love the antiquity one, the oldness. I'm losing my words now. Anyway, and I just had to share this last one here, because it's not just men that are in this medieval collection. There are women too. This is the will of a widow called Isabel Wall for 1544 of Limpolsham. And she bequeaths most of her money to the cathedral church in Wells, as well as money for a priest to pray for me for a whole year. And then she goes on to more mundane things, which I really, really love. She leaves money to the mending of the highway between my house and Horsebridge. So dodgy roads were a thing even back in the 1500s, something that you would actually leave in your will to have improved. So that's it from me. I think we're nearly at 5 o'clock. I hope you all have a lovely weekend. Thank you so much for joining us for Friday's live, and we will be seeing you next week, and I will see you soon. So thank you so much, everyone, and yes, have a lovely weekend and stay warm as well. Bye-bye.